What the fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life? When I was in college in the early 2000s, a sophomore drove his car into a bunch of kids out partying on a Saturday a block and a half from where I was living. He was going 60, 70 miles per hour, swiping cars parked on the side of the road before he hit the crowd. I think 4 people died. He got out screaming nonsense before being tackled. Was on a handful of drugs. Last I heard he was in a mental facility. Friend had dived off a fraternity balcony while drunk into a parking lot. He now has one half a brain and is wheelchair bound. Similar thing happened to a guy from my school. Dived off a pier at his bucks party, hit his head and paralyzed. They didn't get married in the end. I heard he broke it off with her because he didn't want to be a burden. Really sad. Really good friend of mine in college was still living with his parents and had this absolute tits of a girlfriend who also lived with him at his parents'. They were both 19 at the time and decided to try for a baby, except neither of them had jobs or even their own place. They also did not tell his parents beforehand, wanting it to be a surprise, genuinely thinking it would make each other and their parents so happy. Now she's off doing meth again and he's living with his parents still working at Wendy's while his parents takes care of his daughter. All of his income goes to helping take care of her. High school acquaintances were partying underage and some other kids with drama were buzzing the party in some stupid loud car. Drunk guy thinks the best way to handle this is to throw a huge paving stone at the car on one of its passes. Stone goes through window, hits passenger, mid-body/lap, not head. Driver panics and refuses to take passenger to hospital. Apparently everybody was under the influence. She bled out of internal injuries in the hours that followed. Guy who threw the stone is still in prison for manslaughter. Sorry, whoa, here are some answers to the best of my ability. No charges against the driver. Sorry. Yes, still in jail. Very reticent from all reports. Was trying to mess up car, not people. Doesn't excuse it. Just a detail about intent. Also, I should have maybe rephrased how I know of these people. We were high school age when we met briefly. Not I knew them through my own high school. Crack. One of my friends went from being moderately functional to losing any custody of his daughter and bouncing in and out of rehabs within like 6 months. 2 years later, and he has a wanted poster with his face all over it in Tennessee. When I lived in Vegas, I saw all these people come in and bet it all on black, then lose. Then the stare of disbelief as they realize their mortgage is gone and they have to explain that to whomever they had left at home. I remember a trip to Vegas when we got separated from our friend and she was trying to meet up by the casino credit office. Anyway, we didn't know where it was, so we asked an employee. He straight up refused to point us in the direction. Even when we explained we didn't want any credit, he would absolutely not tell us where it was. Guess he didn't want to see a bunch of dipshit kids ruin their lives at the casino credit office. New guy at a factory celebrated finally finding a job by doing a shot at the bar next door during lunch. Got fired after 4 hours of work for it. TSK should have been after work shots. Technically, it was. About 50 years ago, when my great uncle was in his early 20s, he drove home so drunk that he ran over and killed 2 college students and didn't even realize it. After his initial incarceration, he didn't know how to function as a free citizen, so he keeps getting himself sent back to jail. For example, he got out of jail around a year ago and couldn't make his first month's rent. His solution was to walk to the convenience store, steal a beer, and sit on the curb waiting for the cops to arrive. I was 14 and visiting family in Vietnam. A dude on a motorcycle blazed by on a highway, and a few miles later, I saw several feet of his brains spilled on the road. Saw the exact same situation in upstate New York. Everyone on the bus noticed how fast this motorcycle was going, and we drove a little further and he was dead on the side of the road from crashing. I was there when my older brother tried heroin for the first time. Fast forward 15 years and he is constantly going to the hospital for abscesses that appear on his arms and legs, and is almost completely cut off from the rest of the family because he's robbed our parents more than once. Every few years he swears he is going to kick the habit. The first few times we collectively ponied up cash to send him to rehab and tried to be as supportive as we could. After the 10th relapse or so, we are too exhausted to even pretend to be hopeful about his newest attempt to get clean. Edit. Thanks for all of the positive feedback. I had a friend in college who had a tendency to act before thinking, but was generally fun and well-meaning. After I had graduated, my friend apparently got coerced by a woman he was trying to sleep with to try heroin just once. As I heard it, he refused initially, then caved because he felt pressured. My friend overdosed and died. Just like that. One bad decision ended his life. R.I.P. Mike. I recently found a good friend of mine passed away in my spare bedroom when he came to visit from New Zealand. He had scored some drugs off the street and was doing needles. I was in such shock when he just pulled out the needle and proceeded to do drugs all day. Later in the evening I was sitting on my couch and he said he was cold, so I turned on the heater and closed the door as he was laying in bed. I woke up early the next morning to check on him and he was gone. This whole year has been one hell of a ride. Went to school with a kid who threw a rock off an overpass and killed a dude. Whole life down the drain at that point. Made international news. Edit. Flint, Michigan. Imagine being the dude that got hit. Just living your life driving home from work one secretary and literally dead the next. This life is something else. Couple of guys I knew in college were Division I athletes, but for a niche sport nobody really followed. One night they got drunk and decided it would be a great idea to bleach their initials into the AstroTurf on the football field. Really bad idea, but it got so much worse. Turns out bleach and AstroTurf create a chemical reaction. Fire. They burned down the entire field of a Division I football stadium. Caused hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. Made national news. It was bad. Everybody thought they did it on purpose, like some kind of terrorist act. Their only defense was, no, we are not terrorists, we are just idiots. Saddest part was, they got expelled from college in their senior years, didn't graduate, and kind of descended into loserdom almost immediately. Typing this is bumming me out. My stupid ex-girlfriend, in an effort to pay back a loan shark, maced the opening manager of a Blockbuster and stole the bank deposit bags. Then, she went and picked up her niece and nephews, all under age 8, and causally drove around with them. She got felony stopped on a major roadway. Her photo was on the top stories at 10 lead into that evening's news. This happened during the NBA finals that year. I think it was during game 6 or 7, so huge viewing audience. Oh, she was easily recognized and apprehended because her best friend was store manager of that Blockbuster, and she was there all the time. And she had dropped off an application the day before. She spent the next 3 years in a women's prison. Me and a friend were at a party and 2 girls took us to a back room for some fooling around. My friend was giving one of the girls a massage as she lay face down on a pile of cushions. She pulled her skirt up, hooked her underpants to one side, and said fluke me. My friend was a virgin at this point, couldn't believe his luck, and pulled out and stuck it in. Came literally as he entered her, and that's how he became a parent at 17. He loves his kid, but that event messed him up so much, it effectively destroyed his education, job prospects and caused major issues in his immediate family that are still going on today. Early 90s, my friend was a sweet theater nerd who went to the same college as me. She started hanging out with a sketchy crowd and ignoring her old friends, especially when we tried to tell her she was losing herself. She ended up moving to Seattle to hang with her new friends. Growing up, she was the most sober person in our group. She never even drank alcohol, much less did any drugs, but 6 months later, she was dead of a heroin overdose. Dropped out of a very good college with a full scholarship that his family could never have afforded otherwise. After 3 years due to World of Warcraft addiction. No, this wasn't me. I managed my addiction responsibly. Edit. We are thinking of different guys. The fact that dozens of replies are hey, I know this guy's disconcerting but not unexpected. Edit. I played WoW from release through Cataclysm, but never really had a problem walking away from it to focus on life, which is probably the experience of most of the player base. After I quit, I started having intrusive thoughts about relapsing, even 8 years later, but have never felt that I'd given to that. A few kids from school went to this girl's cabin over winter break. One of the girls was standing on the balcony, and her boyfriend thought it would be funny to scare her. So she got started and jumped against the balcony railing, and she fell off from the 3rd floor and banged her spine against a huge rock from the ground and ended up being paralyzed from the neck down. She was supposed to be a gymnast, and her boyfriend overdosed out of guilt. Knew a guy in when I was younger. He was a stud tight end in high school and college, but had a drinking problem. He had pro stats, size, speed, etc. Got a tryout in the NFL. Flew to town, went out, got fluked up, and never woke up in time for the tryout. Showed up half a day late, and they wouldn't let him in. Flew home, and now he does mortgages working like the rest of us. I went to a rich high school. After graduating, 2 kids went to be camp counselors. One night they got drunk and drove back to the camp. They hit a tree. The passenger died. The kid driving was from a family worth 8 figures, smart, good enough looking, popular, on his way to a top tier university. 20 years in prison. The passenger's family begged for no prison time, but the judge said tough shit. A guy I knew that was in all the advanced classes and shit decided against college and went for MLM instead. His life isn't ruined, Peresi, but IDK anyone that has contact with him, and from what I can tell he has new jobs all the time. It's more like a wasted potential story, I guess. I lost contact with him after he tried to get me to join an MLM. I said, IDK, this sounds like a pyramid scheme. And the guy ahead of him got on the line and yelled at me for like 2 minutes straight. He texted an apology after, and we haven't talked since. I was a licensed firearms owner in Canada, and I sold a handful of handguns to my crack dealer when I was still smoking a few years back, and it caught up to me 3 years after I got sober. I'm going to court for sentencing in a couple of months, with the prosecutor seeking 6 to 8 years. And although it may not seem like that much in the grand scheme of things, but since I quit smoking crack, I got my driver's license, started my own construction business, and I'm in a 4-year relationship with an amazing woman who was the reason for my getting sober. All of that is going to be gone, and my grandpa, who is the only family who raised me I have left, will most likely be gone because of him being 84. I'm not sure where you would count the life being ruined. The second I made the decision to sell the firearms. The second the RCMP and local police pulled me over with 20 cars in morning rush hour. My name being put in the newspaper with my crime, or when I get sentenced in a few months. I've decided it was the second I made the decision. I'm my own perfect example for this. Started abusing meth and hanging with all the wrong people. Within 3 months I wrecked my car, lost my home, my relationship went up in flames, and I caught some misdemeanors and felonies when I had only ever had speeding tickets before then. Now I'm on probation for the next several years, or until I can pay off the thousands I owe the court. Stuck living with my parents at 34. Single, jobless, and struggling massively with anxiety and depression. Yay bad choices. Yay consequences. I'm sure a million people have already said it, but heroin. It's not true that you tried once and you're immediately hooked for life. I actually think that myth does more harm than good, because when people try it and don't get addicted right away, they assume the hype is all bullshit and they're free to keep using. It's fine for a little while. Everything just feels nice. You think you finally figured it all out, like you're in on some big secret, until suddenly it isn't fine anymore. And before you know it, you're in too deep, and then you're gone. This one is a bit more tragic, I'd say. There was this guy I knew years ago, by all accounts, doing pretty well for himself. Job, girlfriend, house, nice little sports car, the whole shebang. Well, one evening he is out for a drive on a country road, and he is speeding. Car goes into the dirt next to the road, and he tries to correct, which unfortunately fails. Car goes into a field, flips over and he was not wearing a seatbelt. He didn't make it. All happened within a span of a few seconds. You probably heard about that guy who sold everything he had just to play it in a casino and winning double of what he owned. It was everywhere on the news. Yeah, a guy I know did the same exact thing and lost every single penny he had. He had a huge depression after that. Kid in Chicagoland, 20 years old, jumped in front of a train last weekend because he looked at his investment app and it said he was in debt $730k. The app updated on Monday and he was back to even. He left a suicide note with a screenshot of the app. Robinhood. So in conclusion, don't say racist stuff. Don't ever try heroin. Don't drive drunk. Don't throw rocks off a bridge. Don't use a crossbow. And you should be good.